2 gold bars. They stand for financial expertise, personal guidance, a sign of your success. Do you have them? At Old National Bank, your success is everything.
How's everybody doing this morning? Thanks, Roy. Well, my name's JC. I will be your co-host for this 99th Good Leadership Breakfast this morning, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you. As we get ready today, we're going to get started. As I know you're breakfasting and enjoying some good food and conversation, we're going to put you to work right away. So, as you look up at the screen here for a second, I'd love for you to grab your phones. Today, you're going to engage in some polls as we collect some data on what good leadership really looks like. So, if you can text the word good leadership, all capital letters, no spaces, to 22333. Text good leadership, all one word, to 22333. And when you do, you'll get this nice little message back. You joined Good Leadership's session. Please don't click on the link in that text. All you're going to have to do now is go ahead and send your answer to this question, and then we'll collect the data. So, as we prepare for today, how much of your joy in life comes from your team at work? A, significant. B, a moderate amount. C, small. D, doesn't even come into your conversation. It's too early, haven't had coffee yet. D. So, text A, B, or C, or D to that question, and we'll get started right after this short video, giving you some context into what good leadership is all about.
Most people agree the difference between surviving and thriving in business today is good leadership. But what exactly is good leadership? Good leadership is the art and science of people working together to create great results. You see it when leaders with good character multiply their impact with proven success habits. Great results happen when people work together and create a positive impact on their customers, colleagues, and their communities. Good Leadership is also a game-changing consulting firm headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Unlike other firms who coach individuals, Good Leadership coaches teams to exceed their goals, both personally and professionally. The firm's mission is to spread the idea goodness pays. What's goodness? Goodness in business is when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. Good leadership coaches accelerate alignment in teams during disruptive changes in the business, and they bring out the goodness in people with a proven process called the Goodness Pays Leadership System. It's worth your time to learn more because leading with goodness is confirmed by research to produce better business results. The secret is here in this exceptional book, How Goodness Pays. So if you want to explore new ways to produce better results faster, visit goodleadership.com.
Whew. Well, welcome again, everybody, to the Good Leadership Breakfast. You are part of that good leadership model for how we do good in business, in the impact outside, in our homes, and in the greater world. So thank you for being here. Let's go ahead and go back to that poll for a second and see what there is to see. So again, the question, how much of your joy in life comes from your work? Here's what you've shared. A significant amount. B, a moderate amount. C, 70% small amount. And 4% of you have yet to have your coffee. Everybody, the thing I want to invite you to see this morning, when we do things with goodness, it shifts the way we look at the world. 24% of you say a significant amount of your joy in your life comes from your work. I guarantee you, without goodness in the way that we look at our conversations today with each other, that number is a lot lower outside of the Metropolitan Ballroom this morning. So thank you for spreading goodness in the world today. And we wouldn't be able to do that without the help of our sponsors. So we have 2 of them for some messages this morning. Darren Lynch, founder and CEO of Irish Titan, and MJ Morrison, VP of Quality, Safety, and Operations from Regents Hospital. So Darren's going to share a little bit right here.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the breakfast. I am Darren Lynch, founder and CEO of Irish Titan. I personally and we Irish Titan are longtime and proud friends, supporters, and sponsors of the Good Leadership Breakfast. We're going to hear today a lot of mentions about an upcoming milestone, but next month, and I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder, but next month is the 100th breakfast of the 100th episode, I should say, of Good Leadership Breakfast. So let's give a round of applause. So 100th episode is something to be really proud of. I think that's a tremendous reflection on Paul, Melinda, Aaron, and the entire Good Leadership team. So we're happy with them and looking forward to next month's event. Irish Titan is an e-commerce agency, which means that we build and grow e-commerce channels. In even more layman's terms, that means we build websites where people are buying things, and we work with those merchants, that's how we refer to our clients, on their e-commerce marketing strategies like email, paid search, SEO, etc. We have around 45 Titans, that's how we refer to our employees, headquartered here with an office down in Texas as well. And we have one note that I'll leave you with. We're closed only 2 days a year, St. Patrick's Day and the day after. So.
Woo! All right. Thanks, Darren. And MJ.
Well, good morning. I'm surprised to see so many people here with MEA, or whatever it's called. So your commitment to good leadership really shows by virtue of the turnout here. I'm MJ Morrison. Like you mentioned, I lead quality safety and also operations at Regents Hospital, which is part of a Health Partners system. And Health Partners is a integrated health delivery system, and we have a health plan that serves about 1.5 million participants or patients. We have hospitals, obviously, 9 hospitals in Minnesota and also in western Wisconsin. We teach residents, future physicians, about 500 of them, so that you all have people to care for you as you age. And then we also have a health plan. So it's a big system, and we're really committed to a very strong mission, as you can imagine. So goodness pays really resonates well with us. We really, as I was entering in today, I thought, we really have goodness to the third power here. And the reason we do is, first off, there's good everywhere in all of us and the words. The Good Day Cafe is right next door. All right? And at Regents, I did bring a prop. Is that okay, Paul? Okay, I'm not going to wear it because I'm a bad hat person. But we have a hat that says make good happen. And so it's in our gene pool, right? It's in our gene pool. So it's not a fad. So we support this by virtue of our mission and the communities we serve. And I'd like to, the big thing for us is that as you think about why we really support it, it really started when we brought good leadership in to help us as a leadership team. We really wanted to thrive in our leadership. And in healthcare, there's a lot of diversity, and there's a lot of diversity in thinking and patient populations. And so what we did is we brought good leadership in to really help us become a gold medal team. We felt that we were silver, and we wanted to strive for gold. And so what good leadership did is they really helped us to have difficult, crucial conversations, which we have to have, right, in all of our industries right now. And also how to really create a healthy tension so we could become better as a collective team. And we found that to be really helpful. And as probably you are, we're very ambitious. And so the team helped us how to focus and prioritize so we could get really, really strong results. So as a level 1 trauma center in St. Paul, one of the things we do is we have life-saving every day people that come to us for care and trauma care. And what we found is we also deliver life-saving trauma care, but we also save people from themselves, really, and promote spirit when they don't think they can go on as a result of the terrible and tragic injuries that they have. So I just want to let you know that that's so important as a leadership team to show up every day at your best, every patient, for the communities we serve, and to hold us accountable to deliver and care for all of you. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. It's because of representatives from Health Partners and Irish Titan, like Darren and MJ, that we get to do this. And as MJ said, right? This is goodness manifested here. And it's also a great thanks to the rest of our sponsors, including Twin Cities Orthopedics, for sponsoring one of the exercises that we always do here. So who's at a Good Leadership Breakfast for the first time today? Awesome. Thank you for being here. Yeah, that's awesome. We're growing the fold, y'all. This is one of two exercises you're going to see every single time you come to the Good Leadership Breakfast. It's called the 7Fs wheel. So as we take a look at it, right, the 7Fs wheel is a simple little exercise that invites us to look at where we are, our little internal look at how we are doing. And by doing this individually, it helps us strengthen our relationships, build trust, and embrace healthy tension within the teams around us. So if you look on your little notepad on the table, there's a little QR code that says 7Fs down in the corner. You could either pull up this exercise on your phone by taking a picture of that little code, or you'll also find paper copies of the 7Fs exercise on the table. So once you pull it up, here's your work. You're going to do a little exercise. Faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future. You're going to be able to rank those 7Fs from 10 being that they could not be any greater in your life right now, or 1 being they could not be any worse. Take a moment right now to go ahead and answer those 7 questions with how you are doing. How about a quick little minute of some 7Fs right here? Benny. All right, so now that you've had a little moment to think internally about your 7Fs, if you're using the website, you can click finish and it'll connect the 7 dots for you. If you're doing it on paper, connect the dots on your own. Take a look at your wheel. First of all, is it a wheel? Would it roll? What stands out to you? Is there something that juts in or juts out? As you take some time right now to internally process, connect this to your table. You're going to have a few minutes to converse with the friends and the future friends at your table right now about your 7Fs. And here's one more question to consider and fuel your conversation. What are your 7Fs telling you? What is your wheel telling you? Talk at your table for the next few minutes here. This is always the hardest part of the breakfast when we have to put a little pause on the conversation. Think about the energy you just shared and connected with each other, right? We believe at Good Leadership that you can work on your 7Fs as much at work as you can at home. Think about that first poll question. A quarter of you find a significant amount of your joy at work. That's a huge paradigm shift. And it's these simple little exercises and bringing them into conversation with each other that brings them to life. With no further ado, it's time to introduce the founder of Good Leadership. a thought leader in the executive coaching world and is in this emergent phase of creating this executive team coaching model. Let's welcome to the stage Paul Batz, everybody. Hey! Hey, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is the Halloween jacket. Every once in a while, someone accuses me of being from the University of Texas and being a Longhorn, but that's not true. My wife and I love Halloween, and when I started getting all these fancy jackets, the orange one had to come very soon on. So thank you very much for being here. Yesterday, I was in New Orleans, and I was speaking at a conference at an amazingly impressive organization. It's a member organization of C-suite executives. They only allow 100 people in. They get together for 48 hours. They ban cell phones in the room. It was unfortunate because I really wanted to do some audience response research, but of course they're not allowed to bring their cell phones into the room. The reason why they called us is because this group of people, all C-suite executives who are in the digital marketing space, they have really been struggling with something that we've noticed a lot of our other clients have struggled through as well. And that is that the culture surrounding work from home has created a more difficult environment to create team cohesion. Particularly in the digital marketing space, it's dominated by people who are mid-20s to mid-30s. So think about this for a second. If you've only been working for 8 years professionally, a quarter of your life, you're probably working out of your kitchen. And so there's a bunch of habits that have been formed, some of which are very healthy that relate to 7Fs and those sorts of things, and others that are making teamwork really, really difficult. So one of the things I asked them to do is something that those of you who are clients of our firm, you've seen us do this before. So if we say, okay, write down the 3 words that describe leadership in your organization. Here's what happens. People write words down like courage, resilience, adaptability, accountability. But what's fascinating about that list is that it's individual attributes. See where I'm going with this? Somehow, the way we've been thinking about it, and it's pretty interesting to see where this comes from. Look at any magazine where they're celebrating the accomplishment of a leader, it's always one person's picture. But we all know that nothing significant ever happens alone. But the way we celebrate leadership is through an individual lens. So when we start talking about good leadership, we change the conversation. And this is probably the most important thing that we do, is we emphasize, like you heard from MJ, good leadership is the art and science of working together to create great results. It's a plural concept. It's not an individual concept. And in some ways it means I'm willing to set aside my individualism right now because I believe in so much of what we're trying to do together. This is how this works. And when you come and join a group of people like this and you work on 7Fs together and you explore things that are important to you, it only really comes alive if you take it back to the office and work on it with someone else. Our observation, especially since the pandemic, is that the best organizations today actually are starting to see themselves as teams of teams. And when we had the conversation with the digital marketing group yesterday, they started talking about how many agencies, partners they had. One person who is the chief marketing officer of a very famous beverage company said, we have 113 different agency partners. And one of the ideas that came out of that conversation was that maybe they should have a meeting like this and get them all together and agree on their top 3 can't miss priorities and do a 7Fs wheel to use team theory to get them all to work together better. The reason why we talk about this is that this simple idea here is when the team at the top is not aligned, everyone in the organization suffers. And perhaps maybe the easiest thing to say is there's no way to get great results if the teams at the top are not aligned. So this is the concept that we're putting out there in a major way. You're going to hear about it more and more and more the more you engage with good leadership, because I've decided that my personal mission for as long as I keep wanting to run this firm and do this kind of work is I want to change the discussion about leadership. Leadership has always been about followership, which means it's always been a plural endeavor. And now we have to push back on all the stuff that's telling us that it's really all about us. So I'm hoping you're with me on this because we're going to get in deeper every single month. So we also, last month, was our 98th breakfast. Today's 99. Thanks for reminding us of that, everybody. We did a book launch of our newest book, which is called Good Leadership as a Team Sport. And we decided to be very literal about this because it features stories and data about how we helped clients shift from that individual model to the team model. We gave books away to everybody who was here, so those who were here last month got one. We have 50 copies that are out on the table today for those of you who didn't get one last month. Just tell Teresa who you are on your way out and you can have one. We're super proud of this, and you're going to see that come back over and over and over again. What's been exciting about this particular series is we've committed to this theme that leaders need to be optimistic about the future. I'll make a very literal connection. That 7F's wheel you did, the last one was future. That's the optimism piece. We're asking you, how hopeful are you for yourself and other people? And it's been super interesting to hear from these different voices. So last month was Pete Bevacqua. He's the CEO and chair of NBC Sports. And what we learned very quickly from him is he doesn't really see himself as being in the sport business. You know, they're in the storytelling business, and they do it across the globe, particularly because they broadcast the Olympics. And we talked about all the geopolitics and stuff involved in the Olympics. It was a super stunning conversation. I'll come back to what he told us about optimism. Today, we're hearing from Lisa. You'll hear from her shortly. And then next month, it's the 100th Good Leadership Breakfast. As God is my witness, I had no idea we'd get to 100. It just kind of happened. And we had a meeting about 7 or 8 months ago when we were kind of doing the math. I was doing it first, and then I was like, wow, 100, it happens to be in November. So finding someone that would really represent what we wanted to talk about at the 100th, it took several months. But what's really fun about my relationship with Bill George is that I've now written 9 books. Some of them with partners, others by myself. The first one I wrote by myself. And the very first interview I did for my very first book in 1998 was Bill George. He was the CEO of Medtronic at the time. And one of his direct reports who ran all of HR, a guy named David Ness, was a friend of mine at church. And I had put together an advisory group, and I told Dave what I was going to do. And he said, how about if I delivered Bill George as your first interview? And so on, and so on, and so on. So if you're not busy, on November 18, we'd love to welcome you back in this room. The tickets are on sale after today. And it's going to be a parade of past speakers, including Darren Lynch, who was up here earlier today. So with this now, I want to pass it over to my friend Krista. So Krista is one of the executive coaches at Good Leadership. Actually, she was the first coach to join our roster. I knew her when she was in HR back at Target. I was at another firm. We had partnered on some things. And when we started Good Leadership, which actually was November 1st, 2009. So we're like 10 days away from our 13th anniversary. So when we did our very first Good Leadership Breakfast, Krista was in the room. And she's been working on clients with us that entire time, including she does some work with Lisa, who is going to be our speaker today. So please join me and welcome Krista.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Paul. It's really a joy to be here. So fun. And we've done so much fun work together. And one of our early projects, if you'll recall, is we built something called the Team Momentum Survey. Mm-hmm. Some of you may be familiar with this, and if you're not, you're going to get a little taste of it shortly. So last month, we did a little bit of research during this same portion of the breakfast, and we learned a lot about what leaders were thinking about goodness. And one of the things that we learned is that leaders were yearning for more accountability in their teams, but they were experiencing less than what they wanted. And so this got us curious and wanting to dig into accountability a little bit more. So we are going to use your experience to unpack accountability a little bit further by looking at the 3 questions on the Team Momentum Survey that connect us to accountability. So the first question, and you're going to use the same polling methodology that you've had with texting to the good leadership. We're going to look at the first question. Think about your primary team, whatever team you are a part of and work with right now for all 3 of these. So the item is, the members of my primary team know me on a personal level and care about my life outside of work. And so use that full scale ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree and send your response in. All right.
This
wow.
never gets old. I always love watching those bars go up and down.
This is so fun.
I'm such a child.
They just keep moving. So we need to just see the results though for just another minute, because it's curious to see how many of you here in the room are really feeling like your team knows you on a personal level. I feel like when I was predicting this, I would have guessed lower, because a lot of teams that we're working with right now feel like they've lost this through COVID.
Yes.
The hybrid and remote working places.
Yep. Well, and we think this is really important to the concept of healthy tension, and that when you create tension in a team, it's actually to make things better, not worse. And if you don't know people very well, the tension often goes south or sideways, or at least, not where you want it to. So it looks like in this room, we should be able to create a lot of tension around results.
Well, and if I know you really well, I'm going to want to perform as best as I can. So that's also helping. So let's look at the second one. So we have the right people in the right roles on my primary team. So take a minute to think about, do you strongly agree or strongly disagree with whether you have the right people in the right roles? Well, this one gets interesting too. So the good news is 2/3 of you feel strongly about you have the right people in the right roles. And 1/3 of you might want to think about doing a little bit of talent planning, because it's really hard to create accountability if you don't have the people in the seats that are going to that need to get the work done.
Yeah, and often this question alone creates the tension. For people to be intellectually honest, to say, actually, I don't think so. Sometimes they'll say, I don't think I'm in the right role on this team. And that creates the tension. And when teams are often not getting along, this question has a lot to do with that. So I'm also having I'm thinking to myself, geez, Benny's playing accountability music. I didn't really know there was such a thing, right? Okay.
It's a new soundtrack.
Yeah, that's right. Note to self there.
All right, so we've got one last polling question. So again, thinking about your primary team, if expectations are not being met, I feel comfortable sharing my concerns with members of my primary team. Do you strongly agree with that or strongly disagree? Well, these are exciting results. I love to see this. This is a direct measure of healthy tension, and Paul's been speaking to that, and we talk a lot about healthy tension at Good Leadership. And when people can feel comfortable sharing their concerns, to bring tough feedback to a coworker or say, hey, you missed a deadline and it impacted me, that's the power of really strong teams. Well,
these 3 questions together indicate how healthy the sense of accountability is, but I also have to say, based on my own experience, that there's probably a happiness halo in the room here today. Because we seldom see numbers that high, particularly on that last slide. And so this is where just being intellectually honest, if you want to improve the health of the teams that you're on, learning how to get to a place where the value system allows you to go direct when you're not happy with what someone's doing. That's how values actually contribute to accountability. So I love these conversations. I love collecting this data. And those of you who read the stuff that we write, I will write about this next week, and we'll compare this to what we see on a day-to-day basis doing the work with teams in real time. So we appreciate it. I guarantee you that your research from today will come back in other things later. So thank you, and thank you, Krista. Everybody give it up for Krista, please. So I have to tell you, it's been a really awesome reflection exercise to think back on how did we choose the 88 previous speakers before Lisa. So there were a few speakers who've spoken a couple of times. Two that have spoken 3 times. I was the speaker in the early days. And so now we've got 88 with Lisa. And what we're looking for on a general basis, we're trying to present a mosaic of what good leadership look like. People in first half of career, second half of career, men and women, and people with all different backgrounds, including ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and different ways they make a living. You've heard from some nonprofit leaders, some big corporate leaders like Pete Bavacqua, for crying out loud, at NBC Universal, and some entrepreneurs as well. And at Good Leadership, we kind of have a balanced portfolio of people that we work for. We work for people in business. We work for people in healthcare, and then the sports, hospitality, and entertainment space as well. But by far, most recently, the biggest momentum is in the healthcare space. I first met our speaker today through one of our other coaches, a woman named Rita. And to really understand who Lisa is, she has a background that I can't wait for her to tell you. Everybody has a different way that they grew up, and I'm excited that she gets to tell you her story. But earlier this week, she was named one of the most influential diversity healthcare leaders by a huge organization called Modern Health. And so she's actually now kind of a celebrity, too. So she flew in from Houston along with her HR partner, Ray. And to understand Houston is to know Houston is the largest city in Texas. It has the richest of the rich and also the poorest of the poor. The organization that Lisa represents provides insurance and wellness programs for that population. So you can imagine I'm really excited to hear why she thinks we should be optimistic about our future. Please join me in welcoming Lisa Wright, the President and CEO of Community Health Choice. So this is a long interview format. You and I have talked about it a little bit. But the most obvious question that we ask every speaker is, you didn't grow up here.
No.
You spent some time here because you were a part of United Health for a while.
Yes.
But will you please tell us, where did you grow up and how?
Okay. So I actually grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. And you can tell I'm originally from Louisville because it's not Louisville, it's not Louisville, it is Louisville.
Louisville.
And I always appreciate the how, because what I realized as I've grown up is I love just the study of generations. And so for me, I'm a Gen Xer, and I look at the characteristics and the traits, and I fit everything in it. And so I grew up with 2 parents that worked, parents that eventually got divorced, and because they got divorced, I became a latchkey kid. And because of that, I had 3 other brothers and sisters. And so, when you're a latchkey kid, your parents give you a list of chores you have to do every day. And because you're the baby, that means you have to do your siblings, or they're gonna beat you up or put you in the closet.
That's accountability right there, isn't it?
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And so what I realized is that through all of those experiences, I grew up pretty self-reliant. I grew up with a high level of accountability. I grew up pretty independent, but I also grew up with a greater level of compassion because as my parents were divorced, I would see my mom come home every day. Mm-hmm. She would leave, we went to school in the morning, she would get home around 8 o'clock at night, but we would have already eaten, we would have already done our homework, and I would have done everyone's chores. And so I quickly made the connectivity between reward and benefit. Mm-hmm. And understanding that I wanted to be able to just always help in some sort of way, because I recognized the benefit pretty quick to my mom.
So you went on to college. Will you tell us a little bit about how you made the choices there and maybe some of your early career things?
Absolutely. So I'm from Kentucky. I went to the University of Kentucky.
Okay.
So SEC world.
Yep.
I bleed blue. I love everything about the Wildcats. My second question to my husband was, are you a Wildcat fan? And he said no. I immediately broke up with him. A month later, he's a Wildcat fan.
Aha, there you go. Uh-huh.
That's right. And so I would go on to the University of Kentucky. I would graduate, and then I would go to the University of Maryland for grad school and get an MBA. And I realized that I wanted to be in a position where I could give back. And so I actually started out working for the National Marrow Donor Program, which is based here in Minneapolis. And I would help adolescents that needed bone marrow and stem cell transplants. And I would work in California. And you realize that although that was my passion, I was their hope, right? They're looking at me to help them save their son or daughter. And I would leave and go work for our office in DC. And so from a leadership perspective, I could make the connectivity between the political side, because now I'm in DC, and the wanting to give back. And just the power of laws, regulations, and relationships. And I did that for a while, and then I would go on to work for health insurance and work for Anthem, United, and now I'm at Community Health Choice.
So every leader that comes in and participates in this exercise thinks about some pivot points. So maybe some collisions where you ended up going in another direction that looking back on it, that was really important to you. Could you have a couple of those come to mind?
Oh, yes. There's a number of pivot points, especially working in health insurance. So obviously there's a lot of consolidation. And so at one point I worked for a company called WellPoint that's out of California that would be purchased by Anthem. And a lot of times, when you're going through a consolidation, and especially when you're the one being purchased, you know that you're probably not going to make it through the consolidation. And so you have that option where, do I stay? Do I leave? And I actually made the decision to stay. Where a lot of people were leaving, I had thought about this and I said, what's the worst that can happen?
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I made the decision to stay, and it just worked out for me. And I really learned that at times there's going to be these decisions, but there's consequences, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And so that was a pivot point. I stayed, I ended up getting promoted, and I moved to Richmond, Virginia. But that was one. And then I would say the other was I was at United, and I had this opportunity where I could come to Minneapolis and go through this leadership program. But I had to sign on the dotted line that at the end of the leadership program, I would move anywhere in the US, which is scary. And moving from DC to Minneapolis in December was really not on my list.
You were really worried they were going to make you stay in Minneapolis, weren't you?
Right.
Yeah.
But I did it. I did it, and it worked out. I ended up in Pennsylvania. But I would end up making this transition from working in Medicaid to working in Medicare. And as this industry has grown, there is so much more focus on Medicare because of the baby boomers that it has truly benefited me to have a skill set knowing literally every government product line that's possible.
So not all the speakers at the Good Leadership Breakfast are CEOs. You are. When did you know in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, I think I can do that, or I want to do that? Would you remember how that came about?
So I would say first it was understanding and accepting I was a leader, right? So I think sometimes, especially when you're a woman, the words being controlling, dominating, you're more so afraid of the verbiage and not necessarily wanting to be in the role, and so you're taking a back seat. And I realized probably when I was at the National Marrow Donor Program that I could be a leader. I recognized that, hey, I can build a plan, I can execute, here are the results, we can do it better. And I just loved the entire flow. I loved the outcomes, I loved seeing people grow and flourish throughout. And so at that point, I knew I could lead. And then when I actually realized that I could be a CEO and I could sit in the seat and have a seat at the table, probably wasn't until 2007 when I would meet Rita. And I was interviewing with her at this hotel in DC, and it was one of those mornings that if it could have went wrong, it did went wrong. The subway broke down. It was raining. I was running late. I decided to wear new shoes. I had blisters on the back of my feet. And I'm like killing myself to get to this meeting. And I get there, and I remember walking in and meeting her, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, this is like an EVP of like this Fortune 50 company. She looks like me. And the interview to me today was sort of like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. Because I'm literally sitting here thinking that, oh my God, I can be at the table. And so it wasn't until that point that I realized that I'm going to be a CEO.
Rita's going to be here next month at the 100th, and what I remember the most about Rita, she stood right here on the stage and talked about an image in her head. She was the youngest of a whole bunch of kids, grew up in this house where there was no running water, no electricity, and her mom just kept telling her that God don't make no junk.
That's right.
Isn't that amazing? So that woman had a lot to do with why you're where you're at now. So the one-sentence summary of Community Health Choice is that you're a quasi-government organization that has a health plan. You're not only caring for people when they're sick or providing that, but also have wellness programs as well. And the people that are served by you they have lots of things going on in their lives. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Okay, so now you're the CEO. What part of it brings you great joy? And then tell us about the flip side of that coin.
The part that brings me great joy is honestly just seeing our impact. It's seeing the difference that we make. We just had a board meeting last week, and there's a young lady that works for us who's a nurse, and she's like a VP or director or something. And we're talking, and she's telling me, I used to have community insurance. And I'm like, well, when? And she said, well, when I was 17, I got pregnant, and now 25 years later, my husband and I, we have 3 kids. And she said, but my provider exclusively took Community Health Choice 25 years ago, and I had a case manager who sort of walked me through the process. And she said that one day her case manager asked her, what do you want to be? And she's like, well, what do you do? And she's like, well, I'm a registered nurse. And she said, I'm going to be a registered nurse. So fast forward, here's this lady who works at our company, and she actually used to work at United with me. She's a director now. She has 3 kids, and she's literally went full circle. She started off in Medicaid, she had community, she worked for for-profits for a while, and now she's back at the company where it all started for her, and someone gave her hope. And so that's what gives me the best joy.
Well, that's goodness, right? Yeah, that's goodness. So you're also a CEO of a quasi-government organization in Texas.
Yes. We're having lots of fun in Texas.
So tell us about that.
Well, you know, working for a quasi-government in Texas, there's a lot of politics, and so probably the one thing walking into this role that I did not anticipate as much was the politics, and just how front and center the politics would be. And so, you know, we are run by a health system that the board of directors, they are put in their seats by our county judges. And every 2 years when the county judges change, so does our board of directors. And so it's interesting because politics start to play a huge role in trying to help people, trying to help them live their lives better, trying to help connect them to social services, and trying to have the finances to do so.
So you knew a lot of that coming in.
Yes.
And you got a chance to meet your team, and you hired Good Leadership to help you build this team. The team has changed a lot. So why did you have that instinct that said you needed help?
You know, it was walking into an organization in May. When I walked in the building, it was just me and an assistant because of COVID. There was no one there. You're taking this organization that is primarily, for the most part, been really close-knit, and now everyone's working at home. You had an interim CEO that's still part of the team. And what I recognized is that we are genuinely going to have to come together. We're going to have to like each other. if we want to have impact and make a difference. And so I knew through our relationship that you all focused on goodness, and I know that it's more than just us going to work every day. We spend so much time at work. I was like, we actually have to get to know each other. We're gonna have to like each other. We're gonna have to respect each other. And so I don't think I had even been there 6 months before I called you. I think it was in the first quarter.
Well, and we talked about the fact that goodness is fabulous, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. It is not easy work at all.
Yeah, so this idea of thriving together.
Yes.
Everyone has a different way in their head. Initially, that individualism we talked about what winning and thriving means to me. It's getting that we concept going. So what have you learned about that?
You know, we are going to win together or we're going to lose together. And for us, there's no in between. It is really about the team effort, and we have to be in it together. And when you're in it together and you know that people are supporting you, it makes it easier to get through anything.
Well, and lots of people tested you on that.
Lots of people tested me on that.
Yeah.
It was not easy.
Well, we're going to jump ahead to one of my favorite parts about doing this breakfast, and that we, in preparing you and preparing for this meeting, we interviewed some people on your team. And we asked them to tell us about what your success habits were. And so a reminder for some of you who are new to us, we believe in epoxy theory for high-performing teams, which means epoxy, two chemicals that do nothing by themselves until you put them together. The chemicals are relationship capital, that care and concern we develop for people. 7S Wheel helps on that, by the way. And then structural integrity. That's the rules and the roles and the plan and stuff like that. So we always try to figure out we help our clients develop the self-insight to understand which of these two things come naturally. So what do you think your team said about you?
I'm pretty certain they probably said structural.
Yeah, it was a resounding yes. And what I love about this is that we've been doing this work a long time, hundreds and over 1,000 teams, and it splits right down the middle. Some leaders are highly successful and they're structural, and some are relational. It doesn't mean they're not nice or they're not tough, but you are definitely a structural leader. And we interviewed and found 3 success habits. And so here's the first one. If we look up here, the first success habit, people said, working for you, there's no dancing room. You ask pointed questions with intent. And here's how we get at this. We ask, if you were to go be a CEO tomorrow, what have you learned from Lisa that you would definitely repeat because it really works? So your team said, no dancing room. Why is that important to you, and how do you do that?
It's important to me because, we are in the business of saving lives. And so for me, I really try to work to really bring everyone together where we're focused on what are we trying to solve for? Why are we here? People don't have a lot of time. You need to make sure you have the right people in the room. Let's get to decisions faster. But through that, let's also empower each other. And so if you have the right people in the room and you already know what you're solving for, you don't need to have literally your entire downline there. You could have 1 or 2 people. And so I am very intentional when I go into a meeting. I will look on a list, and let me tell you, if there are more than 2 of my direct reports there, I'm not going, because they should be able to make the decision. And so I think I think about time, and I just think about how much work we're trying to do, and I'm really intentional about who we want to have there.
Well, and I know at the other end of those questions, you want yes or no, up or down, left or right, today or tomorrow.
Yes.
It depends is not an answer.
It's not an answer.
That's dancing, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the second success habit, it's come up on the screen here in just a second, is grace matters.
Yeah.
Honor people with deep listening and allow mistakes. So those two, in some ways, seem like they could be competing if you're not artful at it. So would you explain grace matters?
It's interesting. It really gets to just goodness. People are people. We're all human. I don't know half the people in this room, but what I do know, no one in this room woke up this morning thinking, I want to fail today. Everyone woke up thinking, I want to be successful. And so it's very important to me to treat people with respect, and it's very important to me that my team lead with respect. Because if we aren't in a position where people see us interacting well together, then the rest of the organization isn't going to interact well together. And so that goodness pays. We have got to be good to each other. And so grace does matter to me. And my team knows it as I look at Ray.
And grace is not a word we hear all that often in business. I'm not sure you heard it much at United, right? Yeah, that's right. So then the third one, which I absolutely love. You mentioned it earlier. And so this idea that everyone is accountable, we win or lose together.
Yeah.
I think that goes with the no dancing room piece. But, you know, there were a lot of changes on your team.
Lots and
I
lots
think
of
we
changes.
did 4 leadership alignment retreats in a row with a different cast of characters.
Absolutely.
So talk about that.
We did. So I came in, I obviously evaluated everyone and looked at sort of my vision for the organization, where we were going, where we needed to be at in 5 years, and really started moving the chess pieces around, which, as anyone's been through a transformation, transformations change, challenging, but change is needed. And because of being during a time that there's a pandemic going on, healthcare is changing, the expectations of healthcare are changing. You know, we'd always talked about mental health and behavioral health, but now it's front and center. And there's this higher level of expectation. And then we're also going through this social injustice of everything that's happening at that time. And it was like this collision all at once. And as Paul mentioned, you know, the population that we take care of is not only the sickest of the sick, but sometimes the poorest of the poor. And so being able to meet people where they are is highly important. And you can only do that if you're being accountable to their needs and to each other. And so either we all win together or we all lose together, but there's no in between. And on my team, what people know is you don't get to say to me, well, we just couldn't do it. It just couldn't happen. It's not my fault. It's so-and-so's fault. No, we just didn't do it. We all didn't do it, including me. And so we lose together or we win together, because at the other end of that is a human life that truly needs us.
Yeah, well, that focus is admirable, and it's obviously why you're succeeding. I'm going to invite our friend Krista back in. Krista is one of our coaches.
Thank you.
Coaches listen in ways that are really interesting. I'm curious to find out, what did you hear when you looked at the success habits? If we could just throw those back up just for a second. And then what questions as a coach do you have for Lisa?
Yeah, so as I listen to you, Lisa, and I just, you know, I so admire your leadership, and I've got to see you interacting with your team over all these years. And one of the things that I'm aware of is how far ahead you are of oftentimes where everyone else is at in the room, and you're so good at letting them get to where they need to get to on their own. And you've kind of started to cultivate this culture through these success habits. And I know you're doing a lot of culture work right now with your team. And I'd love to hear the story of where are you, kind of what's your from to vision for how culture needs to change, and how is that going to get you the results you're looking for?
Yeah, so our culture is really interesting, considering that we're quasi-government. So you're taking someone that comes from big for-profit companies and you're placing them in this nonprofit that is quasi-government. So the team has had a lot of fun, let me tell you. And what I can share with you is that, you know, we had this culture of, you know, it was very sort of family oriented, and everyone really wanted to work together, but we weren't always working together for the common goal. And so what I've come in and I've said, okay, these are the goals, these are the only goals, but here's why we're having these goals. And then really, I want people to feel like, you know, they can be this family, but really infusing accountability in. You know, I want people to feel psychologically safe. I want people to have good training. I want people to know that I sit in this seat because I deserve to sit in this seat, and people have prepared me to sit in this seat, and that they are investing in me. And so our culture is shifting from one of, well, we're this family and we're doing all this great work, to we're this family, we're doing this good work that are aligned with the goals, that's aligned with the culture. I feel ready to be here. I deserve to be here. And I have a voice and I can speak up, and it's okay to have healthy tension. And now, because I'm psychologically safe, I know that I can say it. No one's going to judge me, and we're going to be able to have this dialogue. And so that's really our transformation and where we're going.
Yeah. And it's felt. We've felt it as we've been with you over this journey. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to ask a broader question now. You just were awarded this amazing award as the top diversity leader by Modern Healthcare. And so you've been addressing health inequities in your work, and clearly you're in a space that you can do that from. Many of us aren't in healthcare where we feel like we could make a tangible difference there. What would you tell us that we could do to make a difference in addressing health inequities?
You know, inequities aren't just racial, they're age, they're economics, they're religion, there's a lot. And I think what we find is that, we get to the doctor, and, sometimes being like a doctor is like being in front of God, and we don't want to question them or their authority. But, you have to speak up. You have to share if you don't understand. You have to share your background. You have to be able to help them. I had a member once on the insurance side. They're called members, not patients. And we were getting these calls because she had 5 kids, all stair-step. The oldest one was special needs, but her doctor was kicking her off his roles because she kept missing all these appointments. And the state called us and they're like, can someone go check? And so I said, okay, well, let's go. I'll go with you. And we get there, and at the time I'm in Northern Virginia. She's in Fairfax. For those that don't know, Fairfax is one of the most affluent counties in the nation. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. So we get there. She has these stair-step kids, and I'm talking like 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I ask her, do you have your medical cards? And she goes, gets her medical cards, has all the kids and hers. And then for those of us that are in health insurance, I ask the tricky question, do you have your dental card? Because no one knows where their dental card is, right? And she goes, and she literally gets her dental cards. And I'm like, what is going on? Why can she not get there? Because we offer free transportation. And so finally, no dancing room. I just asked the question, why are you missing your appointments? You have a special needs child. What is going on? And she's like, well, I call and they send a car, but the car just leaves. Then I realize it's a car. You can't sit 6 people in a car. She needs a van. And so she's not getting there. The result is that the doctor's kicking her off. The state doesn't want her because she has the special needs child. Her life is impacted because she just didn't know what to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we have to speak up for ourselves.
Krista, that was a fantastic question. Thank you for doing
you.
your work. Yes, we're grateful for that. So let's cut to the most important question. We've organized this entire series, culminating next month, around this question. So why do you think we should be optimistic about our future? And I'm just going to frame it again. We invited you to come up here from Texas. Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
You've had quite the journey. You've seen all sorts of corporate riches in United.
Yeah.
You're in a quasi-government organization serving some of the sickest of the sick and the poorest of the poor. Why do you think we should be optimistic about our future?
I mean, I would say just look at this room. No one has a mask on. We've just dealt with the most challenging 2.5 years that we could probably deal with. America experienced probably over 1 million deaths. We went through this social injustice. It caused us to all take pause. And we're all here, we're all happy, we're all healthy. And when I think about just the optimism and what we've just been through, for me, there's no reason not to be optimistic about the future. I'm in healthcare, and I would say how good it feels as we're looking at the end of the year. We're not necessarily planning for COVID this year, we're planning for the flu. And so there's this level of normalcy that it feels like we're getting back to. there's this level of normalcy just going through the airport and seeing how full they are again. There's this level of normalcy that my child is back in school and she actually has a teacher and she's not on an iPad anymore. There's this level of normalcy when I'm fighting with my husband, are we going to see your family for Thanksgiving or are we going to see my family because they've been left out? And so for me, I'm just optimistic because I feel like that we are getting back to a level of normalcy, depending on what that means for each of us, but our future is bright. I mean, there are so many things that have occurred over the past, 30 months that none of us could have imagined. And we've all had the opportunity to learn from it. We've had the opportunity to pause. Some of us had the opportunity to create new businesses. And I feel like we're thriving.
That's a great answer. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's give it up for Lisa. Woo! Yeah, so now's the generosity portion of our meeting.
Yeah, this is fun. So first of all, we want to say thank you for being here today by giving the $1,000 speaker honorarium to the charity of your choice, Boys and Girls Club of Houston. So Lisa, why did you choose Boys and Girls Club of Houston?
So I'm a club kid. I grew up in the Boys and Girls Club. I was actually on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club in Baltimore, Maryland when I lived in DC, and I'm on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club in Houston. So it's come full circle for me. So I appreciate all the work they do. They do a lot for latchkey kids and for parents who need something to do with their children. So that's my charity of choice.
Oh, that's awesome. A lot of full circle moments in conversation.
Yeah, congratulations. Cool. That's awesome.
And just as exciting for all of you, we've raised with the match $4,846.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And one of you are going to get to give that to the charity of your choice. So, Lisa, will you do the honors and pick the winner?
Okay.
Oh, hey.
Ooh, I like it. Okay, you ready?
Let's do it.
It's me! No, joking. No. Okay, PK Kriya.
Oh, PK, right down here. Come on, PK, come on up here.
Come on up.
Yeah, come on up here.
Perfect.
Fabulous.
Oh my.
Watch your step right here. It's a little tight. Thank you. And PK, step on up to the mic. Share who you are, who you work for, and the charity of your choice.
Good morning. PK Cree. I work for Marsh McLennan Agency. We're an insurance broker in Minneapolis. My charity of choice is the ALS Association of the Twin Cities. My dearest friend is living with ALS, and I'd love for that disease to find a cure.
Phenomenal. Thank you. And congratulations. Yeah, well, thanks again, Lisa. We really appreciate it so much. Well, as we conclude the 99th breakfast and head towards the 100th, I've been reflecting on some of the things that have become rituals for us. And one of those things is the 7F's wheel. You guys did it again today. And I have a story about that and a prediction and then a challenge for each one of you. So the story begins with the 7F's wheel exercise, working with a CEO, a man about my age, and he runs a very large organization. It's going through tremendous amounts of change. And I noticed that 3 times in a row, he had given himself a 5 on future. So those of you who know me, I can't really stay quiet, hardly ever. And so I just said, dude, 3 5s in a row. Why would anybody follow you? And you know what? He got pissed. He got downright ornery. He said, I knew you were going to say that. I think it's profoundly unfair, and I think it's arrogant for you to say that. The assumption here is that I can predict the future, and I should be able to predict the future and tell everybody in my organization it's going to be okay. I was like, well, that's actually not what it says on the wheel at all. It's a simple question. How satisfied are you with the hope that you have for yourself and others? And he goes, I said, what makes you excited and hopeful about your business? And he goes, oh, my team. I love my team. This is the best team I've ever had. Tell me more. He said they've got youthful energy. They've got tons of experience. They're tackling really compelling client problems. And he said, that's the best part of my day. And I said, that sounds like a 10 to me. So we did the wheel again. He gave himself a 9 on future. But the point is simple. We're driven by a bad news bias in the media that we consume. We call it the dark noise. We have choices as to which media we consume. We also have choices, like Lisa was talking about whether we decide to see goodness and positivity and hope and optimism or the opposite. And if we're good leaders with big dreams, we have to give ourselves scores that are high on the future. And if we don't, then you find a friend or a coach and you work on ways to find that. One of the things that's been dominating the bad news bias, and it's still out there, by the way, yesterday on the airplane home, I Googled the Great Resignation. And I found a really interesting piece of research done by the Pew Research Center. And I love Pew Research. It's my favorite organization. I think they do amazingly practical, unbiased research. And they showed a chart that I was trying to screenshot, but it didn't work out very well to show it up to you today. They showed that they tracked the resignation of senior managers and directors since 2018. Now, if you're thinking about the dark noise and what you've heard in the media, you could probably have a number. You could probably guess how many of those people actually resigned and left. So I'm going to tell you what the facts are. The average since 2018 has been 3%. In 2020, during the pandemic, it went down to 2%. And the reason they're writing about the Great Resignation is because in 21, it went from 2% to 4%. That's what the media does. So what that really says is what we're living through is what I call the Great Recommitment. Even if 10% of those people are quiet quitting, in other words, they're coming to work, taking their check, and not really doing anything, the point is the vast majority has recommitted to your teams. The vast majority. And when I talked to my colleague, my friend, my client, he said, you know what? What I see in our organizations, we don't see the Great Resignation. We see people committing to managers that they enjoy, to clients that they love, and our teams. I think our teams have never been stronger than they've ever had now. And that matches with another piece of research we learned about really recently from the Gartner Group. And they talked about now the number one reason high-performing talent stays is because they're stimulated and supported by a team. So here's the formula. This is the challenge. My prediction is that we're going to continue to hear about all this negative news, and I want you to push back on it. The challenge is, can you make sure that you're investing your best time in strengthening these teams? Because if you do that, you will inspire and retain the best talent. As you go back, as you see these people, as you appreciate the fact that they've committed to you, what are you doing to reward that? Lots of things you can do. But if you're a good leader and you appreciate that team, you need to be constantly rewarding them and helping them feel like winners. We're going to talk about that more in depth next month. It's our 100th breakfast celebration. Bill George is going to be here. He's got a new book out. He owns the idea of True North as a character reference. So he wrote True North, the Emerging Leader Edition. Everyone who attends the breakfast is going to get one of those books. It's going to be a champagne brunch. It'll start a little bit later in the day. It'll go on for 2 hours. There's going to be 2 champagne toasts. I'm certain we'll have a record-setting bucket of goodwill donation. Everybody's going to get that book, and we're going to issue a very specific goodness challenge. As we stand here peering over the edge into 100, there's only one word that describes how we're feeling, the people here at Good Leadership, and that's grateful. And so heard me say this before if you've attended the breakfast. The highest compliment for any good leader is when someone says, you radiate goodness. Hey, Lisa, you radiate goodness. So now here's the challenge. Are you all ready to go radiate goodness today? Yes. We'll do it one more time. Are you ready to radiate goodness today? Yes. Tickets are on sale for the 100th breakfast. We hope to see you next month. Thank you.